So hi everyone, welcome. You are in the session on ensuring quality, affordable childcare for all families. My name is Jenna Koloski. I'm with the Vermont Council on Rural Development. Just a couple, I'll be moderating the session. A couple of quick housekeeping things before we dive in and introduce our panelists here. One is I just want to mention that we do have live transcript, have closed captioning enabled for all of our sessions. And if and you can either turn that on if you would like by going to the CC option on your screen and clicking show subtitles, or if it's on and you'd like to turn it off, you can also you can hide the subtitles there as well. It's up to you. This session will go until 3:15. So we'll have an open panel conversation, and then right around 3, I'll shift to asking for questions. If you have questions at any point during the conversation, you can use the Q&A box that's at the bottom of your screen. Type your question in there and just know that I'll get to those at the very end of the panel. There is a chat box as well. I'll keep an eye on that if questions come through, but we really encourage the chat box primarily to be for any tech issues. We have Kim, who's supporting us in this session, and she'll respond to you to help out if you're having any issues on the tech end of things. And I think that's all of the background before we get started. So I think what I'll do really quickly is actually have each panelist just introduce yourselves really quick, and then I'll just take a moment to give an overview of this element of the proposition, and then we'll dive into a discussion. But why don't we go around the room quickly and do some intros. Michael, do you want to start?
Sure. Good afternoon. My name is Michael Seaver. On a professional basis, I'm a banker. But I've been involved in early care and learning through Let's Grow Kids for the last year, and trying to build support within the business community for universal availability of care. Great.
Thank you, Michael. Sara?
Hi, yes, I'm Sara LeBlanc from Next Generation Schools. We have 5 schools that are sort of in the local communities out there trying to show that childcare is needed and quality childcare is definitely needed.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Sara. Allie?
Hi, everyone. It's so good to see your names in the chat. Wish I could see your faces, and so many folks who have been partners in this on this topic, and practitioners and experts for a long time. So it's a delight to be here. I'm the CEO of Let's Grow Kids, a movement for high quality, affordable, equitable early care and learning for all who need it in Vermont by 2025. And I'm the proud mama of 2 rough and tumble 2.5-year-old identical twin boys, all scraped up. So Sara, maybe you can help me think about some strategies to protect their limbs.
Well, my daughter goes to school at Next Generation, and she comes home a little bit scraped up too, but I also kind of love that because it means they're playing outside all day, and it makes me happy. She also really likes Band-Aids, so it's a win-win situation.
It is a win-win. That's a trophy.
Yeah. Well, let me do a quick background and context. I'll say up front that I am by no means an expert in this topic, but I'll just describe what we heard as we were putting together this proposition point focused on childcare, and then I'll have some questions lined up to hear some reflections from the panelists. So, as Paul described in the opening session, we've been hearing from thousands of Vermonters over the past couple of years. We have, in particular, in this past year, we had recovery visits in every county of the state, and then we stood up these proposition points and asked for input from thousands. And I will say, I think one of the things we heard the most in those conversations was the need for access to quality childcare in Vermont. It came up time and time again, and it came up from all different types of participants in these conversations. We heard from parents that were struggling to find care, or whose childcare center or care situation had shut down due to the pandemic. We heard from CEOs and business leaders whose employees were struggling to find care, and it was affecting, their ability to plug in with work and to keep regular schedules. And what we heard the most, interestingly, we've heard a lot about childcare over the years in our community conversations, but I think now more than ever, we were hearing people say, we need a transformation in the system. We need to shift in a big way and really find a system that works for everyone. and not only just for families for affordability and accessibility, but also in the way that we're supporting providers and compensating those that are caring for and teaching our young children. So in hearing all of that, we pieced this proposition point together, which really talks about the need to commit together to invest in a high quality care system that supports and is available and affordable to families, but also that is adequately supporting our childcare providers and making sure they have what they need. So that's what this proposition point gets at. And I wonder, maybe it's a good starting point for all of you to share some reflections on the kind of the current landscape. What do you see in the childcare world today? What are the challenges? Why do you think we were hearing this so often in the last couple of years? And Allie, why don't we start with you and then we can go around the circle.
Great. Thanks, Jenna. And I appreciate that because I'm going to give sort of like a high level view of this from sort of the policy system spectrum. And I can't wait to hear from, Sara, who's working with kids and families every single day, on the ground to really, shape it out. And Michael coming at this from the business community, but from, Let's Grow Kids perspective, we're looking at data, we're looking at systems, we're looking at the situation and the landscape before COVID, before a pandemic hit. 3 out of 5 of Vermont's youngest kids did not have access to the childcare they needed. For those lucky families who felt incredibly lucky to actually find a space within that really tough supply and demand, construct, many families at all socioeconomic levels are paying 30% of their household income on that care. And those who are doing this crucial work, arguably the most important foundational work in our society, on average in Vermont, making $13 an hour without healthcare benefits. So that's half of what a kindergarten teacher makes in Vermont. So that's just to give you a sense of the landscape. We were in crisis in the way that childcare system was set up forever. We've never fixed this as a society. So I think, like you're saying, Jenna, it is no surprise to me that you are hearing this in every single community forum, because this is, it doesn't just affect that child and that family who's trying to figure out if they can have a family, if they can stay in jobs, they can have multiple children. That's a problem for our society if we literally are asking those questions. But it's so much more than that. It affects everything. It's of course upstream. It's our children, and it's upstream in every possible way. So the landscape before was status quo is not working. We're all returning to normal right now. But you can't return to normal if you don't have childcare. And we can't afford as a state to return to that normal because it was not working. And so the beauty is the COVID response really showed us we care about childcare. We understand it is essential. We won't go back. And so, the current landscape, while we need funding and shoring up infrastructure, there is wonderful signs that we understand this and we are going to move to action. One being H171 passing the House and the Senate, with only one no vote between the two bodies, unprecedented, right? Levels of support, both through our lawmakers and also our general public, of this understanding, as you sort of said, not just that this is kids and families, but how it affects our economy and everyone, our demographics, et cetera, all of our expenses down the road. And that's one huge, wonderful step. So H171. So again, landscape is a little tough, and signs of hope. H171 represents a significant investment today in childcare. And it lays the foundation for a 3-year plan. This is year 1 of 3 years that sets us on a course to fully answer the final questions and fully fund the whole system.
Just leave myself unmuted, I think. Thanks, Allie, so much. I actually think I'm going to go to Michael next to kind of describe from your perspective in the business community, what do you see as some of the challenges, and why is this important to you?
It's important to me because it's important to all of my colleagues and to most of my customers, be they retail customers or business owners. So it's the right thing to do, right? To make certain that all kids and all families can access affordable, high quality care. But there's also an economic component to this. It prevents people from being at work and staying at work and having the ability to focus on their work when they're there. When it's a challenge to have good care, or stable availability of care, it's an ongoing distraction for folks who, do have a responsibility to be at work and to help provide for their families. So I've seen it for a number of years, but in the last couple of years, it just has arisen as the dominant issue for young families who are either we're seeing absenteeism because of it, or we're seeing people just out and out leaving the workforce because of the lack of availability or the lack of quality of the care available to them. So it is both those, on the human level and on the economic level, that I decided to jump in and see what I could do as a business person to bring along other business folks to get behind this issue.
Great, thanks, Michael. Sara, I'd love to hear from the on-the-ground provider perspective, what you see as some of the challenges today.
I think the challenge, it was challenging before, then we sort of now fast forward through COVID and obviously have different challenges that feels like it's sort of made them buckle down and harder. Most programs, if they didn't close, they definitely reduced their hours. We were one of them at all of our locations. We still haven't gone back to our old hours, and we don't know that we'll be able to do that, which we know that adds another burden on families. But the reality for childcare programs right now, like we're open 7:30 to 4:30, reducing that hours made it so we didn't have to have a whole set of sort of secondary staff towards the end of the day. So they weren't working these super long hours. So for childcare programs, that's what we're sort of up against. It's long hours, long days to keep that consistency for the children, but it's also a struggle to find the staff so you can have quality, because for us to have quality, we have to have bachelor's degrees. It's part of the licensing regulations. And to get anybody that's gone to school, has student loans, they need to make a livable wage. And that's just not in the same sentence with childcare. So that really makes it so people don't want to enter our field. More people are getting out of it. So it's really creating a huge staffing shortage, which is also what's creating the issues of people closing. The whole childcare model in itself really isn't a sustainable one very easily. We've kind of figured it out, being that I have a passion for teaching, but I also have a business background. So I was sort of able to marry both of that. But a lot of programs, they're doing this because they love to teach and they don't have that business background. So we need to figure out how to get more supports in around what that business looks like to make a sustainable model. So then we can have more quality childcare programs out there for families. And so we can offer the services that we should be able to offer. I think, the hardest challenges is hearing from families like, hey, we want more hours. I'm like, I know, me too, but I'm struggling to staff these reduced hours. I don't know how we get there right now to get to that next level to offer what's really needed. And I think the other part that we feel super bad about is the cost. It's such a cost burden on families, but yet that cost doesn't nowhere cover the gap for us to cover all of the expenses that we have and then to be able to pay sort of what we should be paying. I know we're paying more than what most of the industry is, but the only reason we're able to do that is by being really strategic of having multiple programs and figuring out how they can help each other in different ways to make that happen. But it takes a lot of work. 5 programs is a lot of work to be able to make our staff work and have sort of what they need, but lack of health insurance is why also people don't want to work in childcare.
Yeah, thanks, Sara. Yeah, it seems like you've kind of, it feels like your model is kind of unique in that you have been able to scale up in that way. And also, I'll just say as a parent was drawn to the way that you treat your staff and the way that you're able to, you kind of found, what do you think has allowed you to do that? Is it the scaling up that has allowed you to kind of create the staff, environment and support that you want? And is there more that you want to be doing that you're really not able to, given the pressures of the system?
I think it's both. So for me, it's always being passionate about early ed, and I preach to staff, and it's really a buy-in. So if you want quality, really you need to be the quality. It starts at a leadership level. So I say to all staff, we have high expectations. We know we are not for everyone. You will not be a babysitter here. We are expected to teach. We're expected to communicate and engage. We are teachers. We are professionals. And to do that, we have to represent ourselves as such. So really having those high standards and staff knowing what they're coming into, and they're also passionate about that and excited that someone sees us as teachers, not babysitters. So I really think it's kind of creating people that have those same thoughts and passions and want to make that movement carried forward.
Great, thanks, Sara. And I want to, as we kind of shift a little bit into thinking about action and solutions, I want to dig into that piece a little bit around the staffing, because I know those challenges have come up quite a lot. Before I was going to move into actions, but I'm actually kind of curious to start from a point of I'd love to hear all of you reflect on, if you think about your vision for what a system could be, like one that is working for your employees, working for your staff, working for families in Vermont. I'd love to hear reflections on what does that look like in 15 years when we get it right. I don't know, Allie, do you want to start?
I'd love to. Yeah, I mean, I think Sara's discussion of how she has been able to create high quality in a very difficult environment is telling about all of this, because ultimately the challenge that highlights is funding. It's as if we would all, and I think people sort of say, well, we just have this supply and demand. You have to really look at the business practices. There's some magic bullet here. We're just not innovating enough. No, no. Look at what Sara's been able to do. It's incredible. And as you're hearing, still huge challenges on compensation, on benefits, and, on wages, and nothing you can do as far as affordability for families. So it's as if we all got together and said, we have a bunch of kids, let's fully fund out of our pockets the operation of a whole school for them. That doesn't work. So the funding model doesn't work. And I think that we are finally starting to understand that, which leads us to the solution. The solution being, if we actually funded this system, which H171 actually sets us on a path to do. The beauty of this is we actually have a blueprint. It's well trodden. It's the same thing that the president is actually calling for, exactly in line with our policy work here in Vermont, exactly in line with other states. And it's if you get the funding right, you actually can solve these sort of the twin goals. Sorry, I'm biased on the twin goals that are laid out in H171 with affordability for families. You put a cap and say no more than 10% of your household income or less. So we're saying 10% of your household income in Vermont. And on the other side, you say early educators get a minimum compensation that is fair, and standard, to recognize that those are the two things that cost money. And those are the two things that we cannot innovate our way out of. And so that, to me, it sort of brings to the question. So from the challenge to that opportunity, what do we envision? Well, look, our high quality affordable childcare, our mission at Let's Grow Kids, we envision a system that is high quality. So, Sara and her peers can operate this. They're drawn to the work that they love, and they are supported in doing so. They don't have to pull rabbits out of the hat to make it happen. So there's funding to support the high quality, and the market system is at play so that you can recruit and retain early educators, and they can be supported to do continuous education and all the training and supports that they need, and healthcare, right? So it's high quality. It's the high quality starts with a human, with the adult in the room, as every sector. It is affordable. No family pays more than a very set amount of their income, and they can expect that, and it is guaranteed and consistent, and they can plan for that, and it's based on not how many kids you have, so total for your whole family, and there is enough of it. You don't have to tell your early educator before your spouse that you're expecting to have any hope of maybe getting a spot by the time your kid's a toddler. I mean, honestly, so that's the vision. It's actually not that far away. It's a possibility, and we're actually marching towards that with really distinct action in Vermont. But we need to really understand the vision is rethinking affordability for Vermont. Period. And here we are starting with our kids with childcare. You know what I mean? It's rethinking affordability. It's saying, no. We cannot afford to not do this. This is not an expense in any way. When you do this, you create thousands of jobs. You lift an entire sector out of poverty wages. You create jobs not just within the childcare sector to meet the demand, but with the folks going back to work because they can find and afford childcare, and you put money back in the pockets of Vermonters because they get a rebate on their childcare expense. And that doesn't even go to the lifetime return from those kids and families getting what they need. And it doesn't even get to the demographic pull of being the first state where you can find and afford childcare. So that's just a little taste of the vision, right? I mean, we are close. It is about funding folks like Sara to have her program and to have it be functional and to have it be affordable for both her educators and for her families.
Great. And I want to hear vision for Michael and Sara, but just Allie, really quickly, from an ignorant outsider like me, could you just give like a quick overview of like what H171 does?
Thank you for asking. I should have gone right there, but I wasn't sure if we wanted to go into the policy details. So it does three things in summary. It lays out, I'll go there again, these twin goals of affordability for families and compensation for early educators. It literally says, we can't unsee this after COVID especially. We know we can't move forward without childcare in Vermont. So we commit to, within this 3-year time frame, funding and figuring out a policy construct for the early ed compensation and for affordability for families. Then it makes $12.7 million in investments immediately for basically moving towards those goals and laying the foundation for them. An IT system that supports, income-based payments, supports families finding childcare, programs interacting with the system, the state understanding what the workforce gaps are. So that's one of the investments. The other investment is increasing childcare financial assistance today. So increasing eligibility, more Vermonters are eligible for childcare tuition assistance, more money back to those who are already eligible, and more money to programs reimbursing them for their work through that system. And then finally, there's loan forgiveness and scholarships to stabilize and continue to strengthen the early childhood workforce today, as we still have a big challenge there on wages and compensation. So the third thing it does, beyond the investments and the goals, is it actually puts 2 studies in place. Systems analysis, how are we going to have an accountable, efficient, data-driven governance system for this new world of publicly supported childcare? And how are we going to have a sustainable revenue? How much and from where to fully finish this job? So that's what it does in a nutshell.
Thank you. That's really helpful. So Michael, did you have some vision points you would share for what the system could look like?
So I don't have a vision that is much different at all than what you just heard from Allie. And I think the reason for that is that I've been working very closely with Allie and her team, and with a number of business folks throughout the state, and getting to a point where the legislation that was passed was largely informed by work that Let's Grow Kids has done together with others, that are invested in this issue. So we're frankly very excited that the adoption of H171 reflects a lot of that work that's done. For me, we have the opportunity here. We made a decision, I don't know when it was, but some time ago, right, to invest in K through 12. But we have learned so much in the last few decades about the importance of providing opportunity for children much younger than that, and how critical it is for us to make an investment, just like we decided to do in K through 12, but that investment really needs to start much younger, because it's when children really have the capacity to springboard in their intellectual and personal development. So in making the investment, and to Sara's point, in professionals, this is not, I'm not looking for babysitting. I'm looking for investing in professionals. I'm looking to invest in professional programming. And I'm not saying that I want, kids doing, reading, writing, and math. I mean, these professionals understand what it is that needs to be done to stimulate the brains and the mobility of kids in these early years. But it's just as important as any investment that we've made in K through 12. And it is an investment. And that's what I've told, the fellow business people that I've been talking with. And it's what I've told legislators and the governor. This is not about a cost, right? Let's not think about this as a cost. Think about it as investing in the youngest citizens in this state and affording them the best opportunity, to be successful. So that's my vision. And it does start with finding an investment that's adequate so that everybody has access. And as Ali heard from the bit, and also finding a way to measure what we're getting from that investment, right? So that we all understand that that we expect a return on the investment, and that return is much more successful life experience for young citizens in Vermont.
Great, thanks, Michael. And I want to actually, I want to hear Sarah's vision, and then I want to come back to that idea of that kind of impacts and investment piece and what we might see down the road if this investment's made. But Sara, I'd love to hear your vision from the provider perspective.
Yeah, I think similar to exactly what Ali and Michael said is those things need to happen. Like that's where it starts. One thing I think that sometimes gets forgotten in the system, because we all keep talking about everyone needs access, but the reality is that isn't happening. Even in this model, if we're not thinking about additional funds for the children that are falling behind, right now, due to COVID, we have more mental health issues and behavior issues in early ed than we've ever had. These children have been secluded, they've been home, there's no social emotional skills. So coming into our programs, they're really struggling. And as a private program, we don't have the access to funds like the school districts do for IEPs, the additional one-on-ones. We have so many children that are just really struggling, and maybe they're very physical or withdrawn, but they need that extra, sometimes that one-on-one support that as a private program, we don't have the ability to offer. So, there is grants, like special accommodation grants that the state does, but as fast as those come out, they're gone in a month. So that doesn't make it so it's sustainable for a year-long stint for a child, essentially. And I can tell you, with us opening up our South Burlington location, we're seeing it more than we've seen it before. In one of our preschool classrooms, we have 5 students out of the 10 currently enrolled with IEPs. So you can imagine how hard that can be for a private business owner, and we want to support and work with those families. But again, like, how do I financially afford those extra additional teachers? That is just not possible for those children to thrive. So, agreed, all of that across the board. We need to be able to pay for our educators, since they did go to school and they do have their degree and they do have that professional background in nature-based learning or whatever it is to help those children thrive. So really making sure that it's a model that is sustainable, just like a business practice. It's great if we can start with the funds, but how are we going to keep those funds flowing in so we can keep this growth and this progress moving forward for the children and families for all of Vermont?
Great. Thanks, Sara. So I want to
kind of follow up.
Yeah, go ahead.
On, one of the things that in presentations from professionals that I've seen is, one of the goals is that if over time, if we afford people access to this high quality care early and consistently, that the number of children that will need IEPs will diminish, right? Because they will have a healthy environment. They will have modeling of other children's behavior. We're always going to have children that will have crises that they'll face in life, and we'll need to support them. But to the extent that we make this investment and we get them access early and consistently, it will, at least the statistics that have been shared with me, it will diminish the need for the same numbers of IEPs over time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just because I see the question on the chat about this specifically, you know, I'd love to just add a small note too about education finance reform. K through 12 funding has been a huge challenge in Vermont over many, many years, and it seems almost intractable. We have not been able to find our way towards sort of sane K through 12 finance reform. And so maybe we look at it differently because what's been happening has not been working, you know, and so what can work? I mean, this is what Michael, I think, is getting at, and Sara too, from both perspectives of, you know, seeing it happen through kids' experiences and thinking about the economic case. But we need to release the pressure valve. So, you know, special ed costs, the statistic behind the stories here, you know, have gone from $150 million to $300 million in Vermont over the past 20 or so years, while we have lost substantial student population. And so again, no one, I don't think, would say that we should not give every single dollar that we can to our kids to meet their needs, but rather it's what's driving the increase. What's driving the increase, as you're hearing, is the lack of social emotional support for these kids. A lot of that is behavioral issues because kids have not gotten the social emotional nurturing and support that they need through a variety of facets, and early care and learning is proven to be a really effective and deep sort of nurturing solution for that. So right there, if you just release the pressure valve by giving kids everything they need, not only is it a better way to function as a society, it also saves tremendous economic cost. And you could pay for the entire system if you reduced the doubling of special ed. So let's think about, instead of like pushing against something that is not budging and hasn't, with a lot of smart people thinking about it for a long time, you know, why don't we rethink it and come at it from the root cause and release that pressure valve? I truly believe that when you invest in high quality affordable childcare, we will save K through 12 dollars and allow us to get out of this moment. You know, we're like sort of pulling on a Chinese finger trap. Let's break it instead. And it will allow us to look at the finances differently, allow us to look at the systems differently, so we can actually have some really interesting finance reform that doesn't, you know, reduce opportunity or quality for kids 0 through, you know, graduation in 12th grade.
Yeah, thanks. And I think, Allie, that's getting at maybe the next question I was going to ask, maybe a piece of it, which is thinking about, and I think I've heard you articulate this, Allie, so well, that, you know, when we were building our proposition initiative and thinking about what are the things on the list, right? Like you can build a long, long list of all the things that Vermont could tackle or all the challenges that Vermont faces. But what we were really looking for, like, what are those things that if we address these, they're going to be those levers for transformation for the future. And Allie, I know I've heard you make the case for why that is with childcare, and I'd love to hear. It sounds like one piece of it we're kind of all articulating in a way is that piece of like the impact on children's future and that what we see down the road in terms of you know, the costs and of supporting these children in future education. But are there other pieces that, like, if we get this right, like what could that mean for Vermont? What could that yeah, what other impacts could that have? I don't know who wants to start with that. Maybe Michael, do you want to give it a go?
Sure. Well, let me take it from the business person's perspective for a minute then. One of the things it'll create is, if we invest in this, we will have people who are making a living wage in this industry, right? So that they have higher spending power. So they are buying more things in the community. They're supporting more businesses in the community, and in turn, that there are taxes that are there. You know, there are sales taxes, there are income taxes that are driven by that. So it's not just the investment, but the investment is generating a return. So it's both the professionals who are entering the childcare system to teach, and then it's the parents who are able to go back to work or to stay at work and to be. There is not a business that I meet with, virtually or otherwise these days, that is not challenged with getting employees, right?
Right.
Everywhere you look, people are challenged with getting employees. And the lack of access to childcare is one of the impediments to people coming back to work. And it is a significant impediment. So we will be able to employ, in addition to the teachers, more people at businesses throughout the state. And not only will we be able to employ them, but the hope is that knowing your child is in a good center with professionals, that you're not concerned, right? When people are in childcare situations where they don't have high confidence, that's kind of, you're living that throughout your entire day, and you're not able to be as productive in your job, right? And you're not able to be as satisfied as a human being because of that, nagging concern. And that drives more productivity and more work that, again, it's more tax dollars that helps us pay for the cost of this investment. So it's a very virtuous loop in my mind that, we drive real positives here that come back to support this. But at the end of the day, the economics are great, but we've got to afford kids the opportunity, right? And families. And that's the human part of this, is that kids deserve access, to high quality care.
Michael?
I think to add what you said, Michael, they deserve it, but families also deserve it. So thinking about strengthening families, we can't strengthen any families without, taking off some of that stress of, holy moly, is grandma able to pick up and drop off this morning because childcare is shortened hours? Are we able to buy groceries this week as much as we need to because childcare and our mortgage is due at the same time? So if we can take back some of those things that are stressing families out as well, you're also going to have more productive workers and, happier children across the board. Children are the first people that feel those stress impacts. They know firsthand when something's off and it sets down the track for them. And then it does make it so they're not as successful at school or in their day. So it really comes down the pipeline to everyone and really highly impacts them at such a young age quickly. So, really trying to make sure we want to get more people to come into the field as well. We can't get more staff without more funds. I think what we've seen the most this year, and I think all businesses are probably also experiencing this too, we've seen more illness than we've ever seen. Not just because of COVID, people are burnt out. They're tired. We've been trying to sustain doing what we've been doing for the last year, and people are struggling to do so, struggling to make all those ends meet, struggling to pay for things, to show up to work, to get the care they need, or to have grandma piecemeal it together so then they can get some of their work time in. So we, like you have said, have to change the system. That's not working. It's crashing and working against us. We're working harder and getting no changes or anything out of it. We've got to figure out how to work smarter to get to where we need to get. And I think that's exactly what we're talking about here is, looking at better ways to do things, really needing to look at it as a business model. So again, going back to, that's what I say with our programs, I'm a teacher first, but I also understand there's a business model attached. And if I can't teach if this business model doesn't work. So how do we make it work for Vermont as the business model with childcare?
Sara? Allie, any thoughts on that question of what makes childcare one of those levers that should be pulled?
Well, it's almost become a joke at this point because I do spend so much time traveling around the state to on this issue, and it's it's becoming sort of a coined phrase of, well, that's nice. And people sometimes say to me that you're focused on childcare. It's not really my thing, but I'm glad someone's thinking about it. I think those days are over, because what we've been able to say is, well, tell us what you care about, and we can tell you why childcare is your thing. It's so infrequent that we get a root cause that affects everything that we care so deeply about. And of course, it starts with our kids. Of course, I mean, it makes just good sense. And so, I really do think what I love talking about often is the brain science. This isn't just some sort of theory. This is proven research. We don't just have the blueprint of what kids and families need. We also know what best practices are. And it's based on, decades and decades of true research, a vindicated research. And so one of the pieces of that brain science that drives this is a lot of what you're hearing. This is not just reading, writing, arithmetic. It is all of those things, but it's critical thinking. It is your ability to have successful relationships with other humans. It is your ability to have either, resiliency against addictive behaviors or chronic health. That's the other thing that we're not even touching. We know now, by the age of 5, you have actually baked a blueprint in your body, whether or not you're going to have a higher chance of getting diabetes or cardiovascular disease, based on whether either on the heartbreaking side, you've had a lot of toxic stress through adverse child experiences, or whether you've received, resilient, nurturing, wonderful, educational, stimulating opportunities. So it's a real spectrum. When you don't have it, it causes all that ails us. When you do have it, it solves all that we care about. Very infrequently are we in a position to have something that's the right thing to do and the smart thing to do. It's just very rare. And so, if this is the thing that allows us to sort of give our kids everything that you need, in that sort of whole spectrum. And as Sara said, it's the most trusted, cost-effective place with that relationship with the family. So you have another rare opportunity of a 2-generation approach. Often, as you're sort of hearing from some stories here, it's the early educator that is the first to know if there's an issue in the home, if there's an issue with the family. It's a way to connect to early intervention. It's a way to connect to coordinated services. It's a way to connect to pediatricians. Like, this is a really cost-effective platform. I mean, this is Vermont right here. We do really, common sense, just simple, creative solutions. And childcare provides that space for so many things, not for the kid, but for the family. And then, of course, the workforce, as you're hearing from Michael. So, this is really, I'm glad that this is one of the 9 propositions, and it represents to me so much of what's in the other propositions as well. How do we go upstream? How do we rethink infrastructure? How do we truly listen to Vermonters and find a way to do what they need? And turns out, if we take that leap of faith together and we do wonderful, efficient, data-driven work, we can prove a public-private model can work. We can make course corrections nimbly, because we are small enough, folks. Like, we got to lean into this. We know what to do here. We can do it. And if it's not working exactly right, we course correct, because we're doing good data collection. We're analyzing the outcomes. We're small enough and gritty enough to do exactly this.
Thanks, Allie. So I want to we've got about 15 minutes here before I want to turn to questions. And just a reminder to folks listening in that feel free to plug questions in now, and I'll just get to them in a few minutes in the chat or in the Q&A box here. But I do want to shift to really thinking about, in these next 15 minutes, to action. We have the proposition text as it's written today, and we have this kind of sense of what could be. And then tomorrow we'll be turning to folks to ask for input on, what actions should be taken. What do we need to do? And so I'd love to kind of reflect on that. Maybe Sara, I'll start with you. Just thinking about what, in order to better support your staff and your teachers and folks in this profession around the state, what action would you like to see at the state level, maybe other levels that would better support your work?
I think it's exactly sort of what Let's Grow Kids has been doing. It's really getting our voices out there. And for us at Next Generation, what we're doing is it's better educating our families why what we do is teaching, is education. Yes, it may look like they're playing with blocks, but all the things they're getting out of playing with those blocks. So showing that through our curriculum planning and sharing that with families, like you do, and you really see things coming out of it. So I think it's just educating the community, the benefit. People don't understand a lot of times still how much it does impact, like you said, their little brains so young. So really getting the benefits out there. I think people need to hear why just maybe choosing the 16-year-old babysitter to plop them in front of the TV is not good for their children, why they need those social emotional group skills. So it's educating. And that's one of the things we share with our staff from the beginning. Your job as a teacher, not just of your children, it's of your families as well. We have to educate them what we do and why, because that'll help gain a sense of respect for what we do as well. So they'll honor us as professionals and see, wow, that makes sense. We are getting what we're paying for. It's not just this high quality that we, we're paying so much money for. Like, I get why we have to pay for this. As challenging as it is, we know what we're getting, what we're paying for. These children are thriving, they are successful, and seeing the difference every day. They're coming home tired, they're coming home relaxed and not sort of stressed from other avenues. They're burnt out from playing outside as they should as children. So it's going back to the basics of getting children what they need, meeting their needs first. And I think it's educating families, staff, and I still say even this profession. So one thing that I always kind of find comical, and we talk about in our interviews, I said, our program is not for everyone, because some people are so programmed what daycare looks like. We are not the program that you can sit and come in the classroom and have your phone out and like, I'm just going to Netflix while the kids are napping. No, there's all these great things we can be doing instead. So we're very forward with that, but that makes it very challenging in itself too, because people do want those easier jobs, and childcare is not an easy job. Teaching is not an easy job, but it's rewarding. So it's finding those people, getting more people passionate about it. So educating our community all across the board.
Great. Thanks, Sarah. And Allie, I want to come to you on kind of policy piece, but first, just for Michael, I'm curious, you mentioned you've been involved in efforts with Let's Grow Kids and with other, business partners and leaders. I'm curious about the kind of, do you think there's a lot of support for investment in this within the business community? Do you think there's momentum here and energy that folks will get behind? Or do you think we still have to sell people on this idea?
So I would say both, right? I think we have built a tremendous amount of support and energy through, getting people. Some of it's come naturally, right? Because the business community is living it just like the rest of us, right? And they're seeing it. They're seeing it with their own families or their grandchildren or whatever it is, and the challenges. But we also have been working, very on a focused basis to get in front of people and to talk about the science, right, behind this, why it makes a difference, and then to tell the story about this funding as an investment, which we can get a very measured return on. And so, yeah, I think that we're making great progress. We've built some real strong support amongst individual business people and many different business groups, but we still have, our work isn't done. We still need to continue to tell that story. And, that's my, that you talk about actions, what actions, I mean, that's where I'll be involved, right? Is to help to continue to tell the story, to point people to the resources, the research that they can help inform themselves about why, this matters. And then to, also, try to ensure them that we will continue to be focused on identifying a stable source of income to ensure that this can be a long-term investment, but also work with the legislative process to ensure that that we will be accountable to the investments that are being made here, so that it's not just, okay, new sources of revenue goes in and then let's just hope, right? To actually make a commitment to have data available to people that shows that this is, and we will be able to show it. We'll show it with kids' better success. I think we'll show it with more people returning to the workforce. We'll show it by reduced absenteeism. Hopefully we'll show it over a fairly short period of time by better health outcomes for kids and families because of less stress related issues. So that's those are my actions that I still need to invest in, I guess.
Great. Thanks, Michael. So Allie, I'd love to hear, H171 this year. What comes next now? What's the kind of next step in this work?
It's such a great question, and it's a perfect segue from what Michael's saying. I want to be so clear with folks. We are doing well in Vermont. We are ahead in the curve of a lot of ways. We've heard other states say, we wish we had laid the neural pathways like you have in Vermont on understanding both the dynamics of this issue and the importance of it, because what we saw with the amazing investment in stimulus dollars last year to shore up the industry, you're hearing from Sara, it's certainly still an incredibly tough time. You don't want to sugarcoat that, but we were lucky that the state really invested some serious federal dollars because of the understanding that childcare is so important last year. And so, while those are all wonderful things, it is so far from a fait accompli that we're going to do this, because it's about the money. Money is a difficult situation. It's difficult to get people to understand what a great return this is, that you couldn't get a better return. We have to take that leap. We have to find the will to get that done. So what does that mean? So what do we need? What do we collectively need to get this done? Lesser Kids is a facilitator of a movement. We're listening to folks, we're lifting up their stories, the business community, the early childhood workforce, parents, grandparents, healthcare leaders and providers. So we're helping to create a surge here, but it is not a done deal. We have to find the political will. Every single person needs to say, I'm willing to be part of this. I'm willing to, tell my lawmaker that I want them to do this work, that I want them to prioritize this. So because there is a policy solution, there is a funding solution. And so, and that's a big piece of the puzzle. That's the sort of sustainable, huge part of this. And so what's next in, next year, 2022, there will be another bill, inevitably, that continues to march towards the funding to react to what we have found out from the studies and to move it forward, with 2023 being the year identified to have a revenue bill and really finish, the job with another piece of legislation that involves the funding. And so those two pieces are critical. So we will have policy, big policy agendas as vehicles to move forward in the next 2 years. But that's a piece of it. Everyone has to be a part of it. You can't just say, oh, sure, well, this is figured out. We already have H171. Absolutely not. No one's done this before in this country. It would be amazing for us to be the first to get it done. It will have such a pull on our demographics, because all this discussion we're having about what's wrong and, what are the factors and the cause and effect, our demographics are what's causing a lot of our finance, issues, both in the tax burden under smaller population, our aging population, not having enough workers, businesses not being able to expand, hire, it's a spiral, and demographics are really underlying so much of that. Imagine the pull when Vermont is the destination, the place to go. Already we're seeing it with COVID. Now imagine if it's the place that you can actually have kids. We have national data that says young Americans are choosing to not have kids or have one child instead of multiple because they can't find and afford childcare. It's a serious societal issue in our world right now. And so this is, that's the policy future. That's what we need. We need to all put our shoulder, together on this to make sure it happens. I also think, what Sara's saying, it's not all in the legislature. At the same time, there are things happening that have to all converge at the same moment outside of policy. And that's the work that the field is leading to advance as a profession. What does it look like? What are the credentials? What is the time frame? What is this transition between, today and the wonderful folks, with tons of experience? How does that translate to, to a credential in some ways? So it's this idea of transforming, towards high quality, towards a funded system that actually has all these pieces, fit well together. So that has to happen, and that's largely outside of policy, but it has to meet exactly the right moment on the sort of policy construct that moves it forward and funds it. And then there are other pieces too. I can't wait to get to some questions like the one from Wendy in the chat. There are other things we can do as communities. Communities are coming together and saying, okay, let's get ready for this. Let's ready the system for investment. Let's Work Kids is doing a lot of that work in communities with grants in partnership with the state. How can we get folks ready? How can we get business practice? How can we get a center for supporting the business side of this for all childcare businesses? As sort of Sara has that prowess you're hearing. How can we create those pieces of infrastructure? How can we start collecting data? How can we do multi-purpose units like a housing project that has childcare, et cetera? I want to be clear though, all of that is hugely important and readies the system for investment. None of that negates the state needing to solve this, because you can have the biggest business that is so committed to this and totally subsidizing this. It still will not solve the affordability crisis for employees, unless you're going to fully fund it to the tune of millions and millions of dollars in a vacuum. It just doesn't work like that. This is a community need and it's a community solution. But there are so many innovations that communities are doing that are readying for this. And we see projects in Randolph and Berlin and Middlebury and Aalborg, piecing together funding, thinking this through, bringing in other community partners, and that stuff is going to just jumpstart all of this work. So lots to do inside and out of this policy realm.
Great, thanks, Ellie. I was going to ask you that question. Actually, you just answered my question about the community piece. I was going to ask what we see communities kind of tackling it. Is that important, or is it really more the policy level? But it sounds like you're saying it's both at the same time. It's all of it.
And just one tiny sentence on that, just to flesh out wastewater, right? We've talked a lot about that because it comes up. Wastewater infrastructure. What the heck does that have to do with childcare? Turns out a lot. I can't tell you how many communities have tried to put a childcare project in. We've helped fund through grants. They've had to turn the money away because they can't alone shoulder the entire cost of a wastewater infrastructure project for their downtown, their town, community, whatever it is. Right. But you can't have a childcare center if they don't have sewer that works for a lot of little, toilets being used a lot during the day. I mean, seriously, these are like almost silly things, and they are fundamental to the infrastructure.
For infants as well, who don't use the toilet, 35 gallons per infant. What?
That's a lot of water moving around. Yep. So just one example of the things we all need to solve together here.
Yeah, I was going to say there's a next session on infrastructure and the funding coming to the state on infrastructure. So we need to send some people in to bring up childcare in that conversation. Well, it's 3. Sara, Michael, any last words or thoughts on that before we move on to the questions?
Nope.
All right. I actually am going to do something that I'm not supposed to do, which is Kim. Are you there? I wonder if you could make me a host, and then I can actually let people ask questions too, because we don't have a huge group, and so I kind of be open to people chiming in.
Hey, you're the host.
I'm the host now. Okay, thank you. For our participants, so I will ask the question that's already here in the chat. Feel free to, if you have questions for any of our panelists or thoughts or reflections, feel free to plug them into chat or the question and answer box. Or now you could raise your hand. There's at the bottom of your screen, there's a raised hand function, and I can actually unmute you to let you ask a question or chime in with a thought on any of this, because we're open to input too. So let's start with, Ali, you kind of addressed Nancy's comment here, which is that this is about early child education, but funding is also a problem at the K-12 level in Vermont, and a lot of concern about how Vermonters will support our K-12 system. So I think the answer to that was yes, that is certainly something that's a critical piece as well. And then from Wendy, are there any existing economic incentives to businesses to build or fund more childcare centers? So let's start with that as the first part of the question. Does anyone know?
I'd love to hear if others know about them. I think that they're few and far between, if there are any. There's no sort of, we've actually, there's been some potential tax credits and other things in our policy agendas over the years that have not made it over the finish line for varieties of reasons, and yet I think I would harken back to something I said earlier. In a vacuum, it doesn't solve the broader problem, but things like that can be incredibly helpful, Wendy, when you're talking about, sort of stimulating the infrastructure and getting, community projects ready for the big investment and, and sort of getting this all built from the ground up. So I actually think there's a huge role to play as we continue to build this up, towards a fully funded system. Because again, remember what I started with: 3 out of 5 kids don't have access. We have a build in front of us. Yay! I'm so glad that I don't know if everyone else can see that. Probably not. Reva actually.
Maybe just us actually. Yeah.
The question, which is great, that there are some federal tax credits that businesses that invest in childcare. And so I don't believe, though, there's a very robust state-centered incentive. And like I said, we have had some ideas of that in the past, and they really haven't made it. So I do think that's an interesting part of any package as we build out incentives, work. So it's very smart.
Yeah, and I don't know, Michael, if there's anything you've seen in the kind of the business community. I know we've had some businesses that have tried to make a go of some creative solution, and some have been successful, some not as much. But I don't know if you've seen anything like that.
Yeah, and so I'm not going to address the financing piece, because I think Allie probably, with the work they're doing, knows more about that than I do. But certainly I know fellow businesses business owners that have invested in this. And some of them have worked, but I will say that that's not the solution, right? Because in my mind, where I've finally gotten to is that this is an issue that needs to be addressed for all families and kids, not just the families and kids of a business that happens to have the profitability to subsidize something like this. The infrastructure here is broken. We are not able to pay professionals the wages that they need to make this a long-term career. And we're not able to give business people a return on, sufficient reimbursement to get a return on the investment that they make in their business. We need to find a collective solution as a Vermont community for this, in my mind, because otherwise it's going to continue to be, the haves and have-nots. Some families and kids will be able to access it. And you know what? The challenge for us is most of the time, the families that are able to access this are the families that have the resources and the flexibility, right, to do all kinds of things. Our responsibility as a state is to make sure that all families and kids have access to this. So I personally have moved beyond working to invest and find opportunities for individual businesses to be part of this, and it needs to be all businesses and all residents to be, and invest in a system where the experts, the professionals, are doing the work. And it's not a bank, it's not an insurance company, it's not a manufacturing company. It is the professionals who have focused in this area. And our responsibility is to step up and find a way to resource it appropriately, and then also ask that there is accountability back to that investment.
Yes, I think real quick, Michael, to speak to what you're saying too, I agree. It should be, not necessarily a bank's job to then create their own childcare program, because that's not what you went into business for. So I think sometimes too, that what makes some childcare and business ventures unsuccessful, because they didn't get into the business of early ed. They don't have the background to know of those challenges that you might be coming up against, or what you're really looking for to run that quality program. Because yes, you could hire a director that could maybe do it, but if that director also doesn't have that business sense to make that model sustainable, you're going to be back in the same boat with having that business realizing we're losing money out of this childcare, so we're going to close it. Then we're back in the same realm of things that you don't want to be in.
This is just to finish that up, because I think that's Carolyn's question here on the chat. Why should it be the employers? Like intrinsically, why should an employer have the responsibility to provide childcare, health, insurance? Exactly. I have to say, so Michelle Ash and Peter Ash, they run Twincraft. It's a soap and skincare manufacturing business in Winooski and Essex, and she's now on Let's Grow Kids board because the governor actually came to her years ago and said, "You're a manufacturer. What do you need? What do you need?" And she said, "I need the government to start doing some of these things. I need the government to help me with childcare. I literally can't." He's like, "What's the one thing you need to make soap?" And literally she said, "Childcare." And I am the business of making soap. I'm not in the business of creating a childcare center. And I will. Literally, she found Let's Grow Kids because she was trying to solve this problem. It was such a problem. They literally are saying, if we have to just build a childcare center and run it on site, we're going to have to do that. It's such a priority. It's such a barrier. And she's like, "But that's not a good idea because this is not my field." And so it just doesn't make sense. And that's so inefficient. It's so inefficient. So what we're talking about, what H71 does, by the way, it doesn't bring us on that path at all. It says, nope, this is a public good because we all benefit from it in so many ways, as you've heard today. We talked about this, many dimensions of that. But I just want to be clear, it's also not totally free. We're sort of striking an interesting balance here of it's accessible and equitable and affordable to all with a sliding fee scale based on income. So it's not just free for everyone. And, this mixed delivery with affordability is, sort of understood as best practice in this country for now. And it's the path that we are on. It makes it a much more affordable, program for the entire state of Vermont, but it also sort of reduces barriers to access in its own way. So.
Great. I'm just saying, seeing that Reva's saying, she's agreeing, and there's power in community developed solutions and community ownership. Local businesses are important participants in those coalitions. Great. Well, let me put another call out if folks have questions. Again, you can raise your hand if you want to chime in with your actual voice, or you can put things in the chat or Q&A. Anyone else with thoughts or questions to share? Yes, Riva, let me just click. You should be able to unmute. And you there?
Since you asked.
Yes, hi Riva.
But as Sara's work sort of illustrates, I worry a little that we talk too much these days about brokenness and not about what the field knows. So I agree, Michael, it appears that things are broken, but it's, as Ali said, mostly about the money. Early educators know how to run these businesses. They know how to do this if parents could afford to pay for it. That's the primary dilemma. So giving parents resources they need to choose, as Sara said, the program that fits their needs, right? And imagine if Sara had enough resources to fund 2 shifts of staff across an entire day, and not put that on the one group of staff she can find who can work. Like, we have to imagine using the strengths that we have in the system with all the funding they need to make it happen, because there's a lot of good stuff. And I worry, I have heard policymakers, I have heard even some investors say, this system's so broken, we should just wipe it off the face of the earth. Why would you wipe off Sara's 4 good programs? Why would we not give her enough money to run those programs to serve the parents that already know and trust her? Like, that's my little bit of worry now, that we have to have some appreciative inquiry about what is working and what we need more than anything else. Really, like, I feel like saying it's the money without saying stupid, because that's not appreciative, but it's about the money. So that's my comment. And thank you guys a lot for caring about this and making it part of the future.
Yeah, and
Thank you,
that's a good reminder to me, Riva, that, you know, words matter, right? So when I make a general statement like it's broken, I do think it's the resource side of this, the funding source, that is the piece that is most broken, and it is the bedrock for our ability to invest in facilities, people, and all of those things that are needed to support access and the universal access. So good reminder to me to be mindful of the words that I'm using as I'm out there trying to build more support here. I don't want people thinking that we need to just throw away the good stuff that's going, because certainly working with Let's Grow Kids, that's not how I feel.
Great. Sara and Ali, any reflections on what Riva shared? We've got a couple minutes and then we'll wrap up here.
I just really appreciate it. I mean, you know, and I really appreciate Michael's response. What I have found is amazing is some people enter this and say, well, is a problem? I'm here to solve it. There's always a balance sheet that can be figured out. There's always, you know, like an innovation that can, you know, sort of flip this. And this is what we have collectively found as a culture across this country. And that's why all of our policies look similar, like we are vindicating each other in how we're approaching this work. And it is just as Riva, you know, and Michael, and you're hearing from Sara, it's this idea that some people say, well, okay, great. Then we obviously this is important. I get it now. Let's build, you know, castles in every town for 0 to 5-year-olds that look like this, and, you know, have, you know, is sort of this utopian sort of future. Actually, that again, that it is within our, you know, fingertips here to get this done, and it's through that funding to build off what you have today, because the bones of it are right. Even the funnels of money exist, the channels, sort of the hoses, they just need to be filled with water. You know, for example, you could literally just push money through childcare financial assistance. It already exists. If you do it, you can do it just at enough level that it's a population approach to affordability. So you literally just toggle the levers and boom, you even have the infrastructure in place to make it so. You know, so if you use it's sort of watering fertile ground. And then we have to understand that, because, by the way, it makes it much more attainable. It respects and values the work of folks who have been making this happen for our kids and families in very adverse, you know, circumstances and underfunding, you know, for decades, forever. And, you know, and it's just really important, because we do have to get sort of that vision, that shared vision. And what has helped me is to say it starts with the early educator. That's helped me really translate this to some folks who say, well, tell me exactly what this looks like and smells like, and can I feel it and can I touch it? And like, yes, go to Sara's program, go to these high quality programs around the state, you know, and let's just make this easier for them. Let's make this actually doable, a viable, you know, career.
Great. Well, with just a minute left, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. And let me just take a second to thank each of you, Michael, Sara, and Ali. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and perspective and being a part of the conversation, and for all that you all are doing to advance this work out there in the field. And Sara, for creating a center that I feel good about sending my kiddo to every day. So thank you all so much. And for participants, thanks for being a part of the conversation. You have a break right now for 15 minutes, and then at 3:30, we'll jump right back into the second session. So we'll see you there. Thanks a lot, everyone.
Thanks. Appreciate it, Jenna.
Thank you.